13th, 2019. I will call this meeting to order. I'll have a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Okay, moving quickly, we're going to an accessory dwelling unit at 21 Cole Parkway, AKA 1 Cole Parkway. All right.
Okay, all set?
You're up.
All right, so
Introduce yourself.
Jeff DeLisi, I'm here on behalf of Doug and Diane Smith, who are the owners of the LLC, which owns this property. The reason why we're here tonight is for a special permit to convert about 1,280 square feet in an office on the third floor above, which is the floor above the bowling alley down in the harbor. We would be looking to convert that into a one-bedroom, one-bath accessory dwelling. Just by way of background, the building was constructed in about 1920. It occupies nearly the entire site. If you look at the record plan that was provided with the application, literally the building is almost the entire site, so there's no on-site parking whatsoever for this structure. There are 3 commercial establishments in the building right now: a bowling alley, a hardware store, and a coffee shop. In 2018, October, the ZBA issued a permit to allow for a change of a pre-existing non-conforming use. That would to change that use to the requested accessory dwelling, which is why I'm here today. The clients have owned the property and operated the bowling alley since 1985. They're forced to downsize their home in Pembroke and have provided a notarized statement to the planning board with the application that indicates that they'll be the occupants of the proposed accessory dwelling. As to parking, there's actually a net reduction in the number of parking spaces. The bylaw requires 1 parking space per every 300 square feet of office space and 1 parking space per every bedroom of an accessory dwelling. When you do the math, that's a decrease in the demand by about 3 parking spaces. The ZBA found there'll be no noticeable or detrimental impact on the neighborhood whatsoever. And so just quickly, just running through your bylaw, you have criteria that need to be met for any accessory dwelling in the business zone. And I'll just briefly run through them. There needs to be a complete separate housekeeping unit, which this is proposed to be. It must be above the first floor in the building which contains a business, which it is. The bylaw actually exempts lot area and density requirements from accessory dwellings in the business district, so that doesn't apply. There can be no more than 3 accessory dwellings in any one business building, which there's not. The concept is to maintain the exterior appearance of the building as much as feasibly possible. The only change we're proposing is a door for egress purposes on the side of the building on the first floor. Unless otherwise required by the building code, you can't have exterior stairs except on the side and rear of the building. We're not proposing any exterior stairs. The accessory dwelling has to be clearly a subordinate part of the business use. It is, as it would be occupied by this business owner. The accessory dwelling is not restricted as to size in the business zone, so the whole concept of 750 square feet or a certain percentage doesn't apply, but in any event, we're proposing the accessory dwelling to be less than 10% of the gross floor area of the building. The planning board has the ability under 3 sections of the bylaw to waive parking requirements. This actually is exempt from parking requirements under the bylaw, but in any event, you can waive it under section 530.2G and section 760.8 if there's adequate on-street parking available, which we believe there is on Cole Parkway and Front Street. So there is a requirement. I see that the fire chief has issued a letter literally tonight at 10 minutes to 5. There's a requirement in the bylaw that any accessory dwelling has to comply with all other codes, which includes fire and building code. I think the fire chief had an issue. There might be a fire alarm system that might be required, and certainly, if the board would be, we'd be happy to, we have to comply, so we'd be happy to agree to any condition, even though it's required in any event. And as far as sewerage and drainage, this property is connected to town sewer and water, so there's no issues there. So I'm happy to talk about how this meets the purposes of the bylaw. I think it's pretty obvious. Answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll open it up to the board. Bill?
I have no problem with it, no problem with if the waiver is actually needed for the parking. One thing I found interesting is I couldn't figure out why the sink was so far away from the stove.
That's not something I'm prepared to answer. I have no idea.
Oh, it just struck me as
Yeah,
strange when I looked at it.
yeah,
I'm okay.
thank you.
Patty?
I'm all set, thanks.
I'm all set.
Ben?
Okay.
Steve?
No question. Just one thing, the exterior door that you're talking about, where is that going?
It's going to
The
be
new
on.
door?
Yeah, it's going to be on the side of the building that kind of faces the bank. And it'll be towards the rear, the stairs are gonna actually come down on the inside of the building and empty into the rear of
right
the
here?
coffee shop space. So in the rear of the building along the side would be where the door would be located.
And so that's is that his only way in?
No.
Is there a second way in?
Yes, there are stairs on the other side of the building that go
Okay,
up
where does that come from?
from
That-
the ground floor.
Yeah, from the ground floor, from the bowling alley, and then there are stairs from that floor into the office presently.
So the stairs coming from the ground floor, there's obviously a door there somewhere? It doesn't look
Up
like
top,
it.
oh, yes, there is. There is.
Yeah.
There's a
yeah,
door.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right here, somewhere. Okay.
And Bob Vogel and I talked about how Bob's going to require some more detailed code-compliant type of plans. This is conceptual at the moment.
Are you all set?
Yes.
Okay. I'm fine. All right, so. I guess we can move along.
We get public, no public,
Any public? Anybody here from the public?
town planner?
No, as Jeff said in his discussion, I did include proposed draft conditions that would cover building code and fire in the event that anything was needed.
Okay.
So I think it's covered.
All right.
Do we need to address parking, or just assume that parking is available?
I actually put in a draft condition that you agreed to a waiver of the parking.
Good.
And some of the findings show why you can decrease.
Okay.
It's a decrease in parking demand.
Okay, so those are the same ones that you'd sent out?
Those are the same ones I sent out to the board.
All set.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Patty?
Okay, I move to make the following findings of fact. On January 16, 2019, Esneni LLC, Douglas C. Smith, manager, applied for a special permit for an accessory dwelling above a business on the property at 21 Cole Parkway, AKA 1 Cole Parkway. 2, the proposed accessory dwelling unit will be on the third floor of a building above the businesses of Scituate Way, Watson Family Hardware, and Coffee Corner. It is located above the first floor or street level. One accessory dwelling unit is proposed. Based on a floor plan submitted by the applicant, the floor area of the proposed accessory dwelling will be approximately 1,280 net square feet. This is 9.85% of the total square footage of the building, which is 12,992 square feet, according to the Town of Scituate's assessors records. The accessory dwelling is a subordinate part of the business structure, and its size is unrestricted under the zoning bylaw due to it being above a business. 4, the accessory dwelling unit will be a complete separate housekeeping unit that functions as a separate unit from the primary structure. 5, the accessory dwelling has been designed so the appearance of the building remains unchanged as much as feasibly possible, except for an added door on the ground floor on the southerly side of the bank, of the building facing the bank, that is necessitated by the building code for the secondary egress from an interior stair. 6, Mr. Smith has owned the building since September 10th, 1985, 3 years prior to the January 1, 1988 adoption of parking requirements set forth in the Scituate zoning bylaw. Patrons of the building park in Cole Parkway or Front Street, as there are no on-site parking spaces available. The zoning board of appeals found that the use of the bowling alley's office on the 3rd floor of the building is pre-existing, non-conforming, and structures and land uses in existence on January 1, 1988 are not subject to, parentheses, off-street parking requirements, end parentheses, so long as they are not enlarged or changed in a manner that increases their parking needs. The ZBA found that the proposed conversion of the 3rd floor office to a dwelling unit would decrease the net parking demand by 3 parking spaces, and therefore the property is pre-existing, non-conforming as to the zoning bylaw parking requirements. Thus, even though the property is exempt from parking requirements due to its grandfather's status, the proposed change would be less non-conforming than the existing parking conditions. 7, the owner has submitted a signed notarized statement that he and his wife will be occupying the accessory dwelling on the property as their primary residence. 8, the accessory dwelling will be serviced by town water and sewer. Any new connections will comply with the DPW requirements. 9, the applicant has received a finding from the ZBA under MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6 and Section 820 and 950.2D of the Scituate zoning bylaw that the proposed conversion of the non-conforming bowling alley's office into a dwelling unit to be used by the proprietor of the bowling alley will not be substantially more detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming use. And 10, the application meets the standards of the Scituate zoning bylaw for an accessory dwelling special permit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve the special permit for an accessory dwelling above a business at 21 Cole Parkway, AKA 1 Cole Parkway, with the following conditions, in addition to the modified standard conditions for accessory dwellings approved by the planning board after a public hearing on 12/17/15. 1, except for any changes necessary to meet these conditions or the state building code, any construction shall substantially conform to the floor plan submitted with the application on 1/16/2019 and incorporated as part of this decision. 2, the number of bedrooms in the accessory dwelling is limited to 1 in the location and size indicated on the floor plan submitted with the application. 3, no further expansion of the accessory dwelling floor area is allowed without further review of the planning board. 4, the accessory dwelling shall conform to all applicable standards in the building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, fire, and health codes and bylaws. 5, any lighting installed shall be downlighting to not shed light on abutting properties. 6, the planning board agrees to a waiver of the parking requirement for the accessory dwelling as there is a decrease in demand for the pre-existing non-conforming use and there is parking in Cole Parkway. 7, construction work shall not begin prior to 7 a.m. weekdays and 8 a.m. on Saturdays and shall cease no later than 7 p.m. on sunset, whatever is earlier. No construction shall take place on Sundays or legal federal holidays. Construction includes the idling of vehicles, delivery of materials to the site, and all other construction activities. 8, the standard conditions for accessory dwellings approved by the planning board on 12/17/15 shall be conditions of this decision and shall be included for recording at the Registry of Deeds. 8, the applicant shall meet all requirements of the Building Department, Board of Health, Department of Public Works, Fire Department, Water Department, Conservation Commission, and other town agencies. B, the property shall contain a maximum of 1 dwelling unit above a business as proposed. No further expansion is allowed without prior approval of the planning board. C, an owner of the property or proprietor of any business operating out of the property shall reside on the property as long as it contains an accessory dwelling unit. D, the planning board may require an on-site inspection for conformance to the approved plans and these conditions prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the accessory dwelling. E, an accessory dwelling special permit certification of ownership and occupancy signed by any new owner shall be provided to the planning board within 7 days of the closing of the sale of the property. It is recommended that this be signed at the closing. F, at any time at the request of the planning board, the owner shall provide a notarized affidavit indicating that either the primary or accessory unit is owner occupied. G, construction vehicles and equipment shall not idle, be parked, stored, loaded, or unloaded in the street. H, this special permit shall be void if it is not recorded at the registry of deeds within 90 days of the date of filing with the town clerk. The owner shall provide proof of this recording to the planning board. I, this special permit shall lapse within 2 years from the date of its issuance unless substantial use or construction has commenced prior to that time in accordance with MGL Chapter 48, Section 9. And J, the planning board reserves the right to review compliance with the special permit at any time. The special permit shall terminate if the use is not in accordance with this decision and its conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Can I ask about
Yes.
8G, stored, loaded, or unloaded in the street? Is that just Front Street or is that Cole Parkway?
Oh, it would apply to Cole Parkway, too.
Yeah, both.
Okay, thank you.
And F, do I need primary in F?
Do you need, what?
Yeah, F, do we need the word primary? 8F?
Yeah, no, you don't need
Okay. Anything else? All right. All those in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye.
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 You're all set, thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Good luck tonight.
Thanks. Did you put this in the circular file?
Can we take off the...
I will.
All right, we have 10 minutes before our noticed public hearing. Do we want to start approving minutes?
May I just ask you something about that motion as amended?
Ben,
As amended, I don't.
Did you say that?
It wasn't as amended.
Yes, it was.
It was, I moved it as amended,
Oh,
okay?
who seconded it as amended?
Oh,
Okay.
Okay,
Bill.
thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
I do wrong?
No, you did
No,
right.
I just couldn't hear, I just was writing something in.
All right, minutes.
I move to approve the minute meetings for February 7th, 2019.
Those are the ones that were emailed.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Accounting?
And I move to approve the requisition of $116.58 to Gatehouse Media for legal ad for 27 Hood Road, for $9,736.64 to Horsley Witten for a peer review for Seaside and Scituate, for $108.54 to Gatehouse Media for a legal ad for 185 First Parish Road, for $884
Excuse me,
to
could you guys just keep it down? It's hard to hear here.
Chesia Consulting Services, Inc. for peer review of the Glen, for $312.50 to Chesia Consulting Services, Inc. for a peer review for 50 Country Way, for $1,275 to Merrill Corporation for peer review of Curtis Estates, for $1,800 to Merrill Corporation for stormwater peer review for 269 First Parish Road.
Is there a second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Liaison reports. I did not attend the CPC meeting on Tuesday night. However, everything that was put forward was passed unanimously.
As I understand the ball fields, right, they went to what, 5.2 or 5.4, and they're gonna bond 2.9?
The figures are still a little fuzzy, but yes.
Oh, so they changed how much they...
6.2, and they're gonna bond about 500.
That's bigger.
That's way bigger than what
It's close to an $11 million project.
All right.
Yeah, I think they told us, what, 10.5?
Yes.
10 to, yeah, whatever.
I was under the impression, Mike, that CPC was bonding 3 million over and above the 5.1.
I thought I read today that it was they approved 6.2, and then they were gonna bond the rest pending receipts of other funds.
The issue here is, if I may digress, CPC cannot pay for maintenance and cannot pay for turf fields. So there is a shortfall of anywhere from 1 point something million to 2, that somewhere has to be made up.
Can I make one other comment?
You certainly may.
Because you're the most reasonable, more reasonable board. There's never been 1 ounce of discussion over the safety of turf fields as opposed to natural grass fields. And my view is that should be the first discussion, not no discussion.
I have to say, from what I have seen, reviewing turf fields with the cut-up tires and what have you that's part of the turf, it is really worth discussing.
I've been reading a lot of literature on it, and there are 14 major studies. The federal government refuses to get involved and leaves it up to the state. And there are 14 major studies, all funded by turf field companies.
Okay, thank you. Your point is well taken.
How many years are they bonding this over?
Do you,
I
5?
believe.
So it's like $1 million a year essentially. And what kind of rates, does anybody know?
It's under 3,
Under 3?
I think.
They actually, yeah, question,
Yep.
and maybe you can answer it. Is, my understanding is that you can't bond, or you can't, let's see if I get this right. You can't, if you're starting to bond, you can't use money that is part of the contribution or the kickback that we get from the state?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm just
So this
wondering whether
is
that
the
impacts,
town's portion,
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the town portion only. It could
which
be
is what, 1%?
3.
3.
3.
Mhm.
And what does that amount to each year?
I'm not sure what it is right now.
Do you know?
No.
That's $1 million a year for the next 5 years. Right, for bonding. So we're cutting out $1 million of capacity for the next 5 years.
I think that there are other figures that will come to the fore before all of this is
I agree.
finished.
I agree.
It's not, none of this is written in stone, and I know that there was an email from Gary Meyerson that he had gone through this with Nancy Holt, and some of the figures were not as they should be, and so we're waiting for another email,
That's correct.
okay? So it's not over yet.
Has to get by town meeting.
Hmm?
Has to get by town meeting.
Yes, but the other thing is it does not need to be an override,
Right.
which may or may not be a good thing. All right, EDC, we haven't met this month. Anything else from anybody?
This was before conservation, and they said fine, the fields.
They did?
They asked the same kind of questions we did.
Right, okay. All right, planning and development report?
We remain extremely busy,
Yes.
and we will for a while. Meeting on 28th is going to be long,
Mm-hmm.
so everybody can
And it starts at 7?
start at 7.
Yes.
Dinner first,
Hmm?
have supper first.
What all do we have from that? We get the 2 accessory dwellings?
We have the multi-family unit on Blaze Road, well, 1780 water treatment plant, site plan administrative review, Greenbush zoning public hearing, athletic fields, and 2 A&Rs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I can go get.
Yes, have them
items here.
Set up.
How much money do you apportion each year for CPC?
From where? My taxes? Or
No,
what?
no, from the CPC fund, how much is spent each year?
Not really all that much. I will forward all of the information I have to you.
I think all that
I'm
stuff
just
is.
trying to understand the economics here.
Yeah, I think it's
This
all
is essentially
online.
mortgaging our future to do this, right?
Not necessarily, Steve.
Sure it is.
Let me see if I can find it.
It eliminates your
But from
capacity,
a
right?
MBTA standpoint,
Cuts your capacity for
access
5
to the
years.
train,
In one fund,
Huh?
in one fund, in one part of
they're
it.
kind of used
Yeah,
to,
but it-
like, they-
I know.
you have to
It's not
park here,
a
walk to the
limitation we
train.
ever had
That's-
before.
they take care of
The
it.
same reception group there.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, how much, but that's, I mean, you can ask that, I don't know what really went into the design of this.
Is he here?
Oh. I asked him to stay on.
Yeah, I think it's, if he's not here, yeah, we
You
can
tell them that right away.
Tell him you can leave at 10 past. All right, thank you.
Before it gets lost.
Here, read this.
Doesn't even make any sense to me, what they're even saying. Does it to you?
Not really. Let me see.
They saying the cash from the town,
Yeah.
so they're
From
saying
the-
they're $250,000 short from the town.
This is what they voted. This was athletic fields, 5.4 million, 2.9 for debt, for a total of 8.3.
So this is it here, this is a spreadsheet.
I think I've got that in here too.
Huh?
I'm sure I have it.
I filled you in.
Have it in here.
I took the address out.
So this 5.4 million, is that what comes in every year?
No, that's what we have been accruing.
What comes in every year?
We get 30% match. Or maybe, no, it's down to 19%. That part I am not sure.
Because that's the only thing that can apply to, right? Is that-
I thought Jim was, you're up here with us.
See what else?
Jim, okay.
Can we hand these out?
Here. Here's what you want. I will forward this to you. Spreadsheet with the new debt balance. How do I do that?
Yes.
To go. Type your thing. You can do it faster than that.
What did I have here?
Wow. Quite a book here tonight.
Very good.
Invalid. I'll try again in a bit. All right, people, thank you. It's 7 o'clock. This is a public hearing on the mixed-use special permit, Drew Company / MBTA. There are a lot of people here this evening. You will have ample opportunity to talk. This, and I will acknowledge from the giddy-up that this was and is an incomplete submission. And while I understand that when we ask people, developers, to come in with their plans, that they be complete, because of the magnitude of this project, we have allowed them to submit before they're totally and completely done. So I ask you all to bear with us and be patient. This will be continued after this evening. This is a bit of a process that will last more than a couple of hearings. But you all will be allowed to participate. So, that said, I will have the proponents introduce themselves and make their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, everybody. My name is John Drew. I'm president of the Drew Company, also a resident. I live on 22 Michael Ave in Scituate. We are very pleased to be back in front of you this evening to present our project. We're still working on a name, so that's something we can bring back to you next time. We've brought with us our engineers from Horsley Witten, also our traffic consultant, David Black from VHB, and our architect, Jim Sandell, to my right, and David is to my right. And John E. Drew, our chairman, is to my left. We are a real estate development company, for those who don't know us, based in Boston. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Dublin, Ireland as well. I've been here, living here for 11 years. We've been working on this project, I think, on and off for 3 years. We originally bid on it when the MBTA put it out to bid. We lost that bid. The deal fell through with that developer, so we went back in a couple years ago and bid again. We've been working with the town through the process, with the selectmen, and getting feedback as we've gone along. I think I'll explain some of the reasons it's taken so long, but I think the time has actually helped the project quite a bit, and we have a much better opportunity here to present to you now. So to give you a little bit of the site, this is the MBTA lot across the street. They have two lots. They have a lot directly in front of the parking of the train, and this is the lot across from the train. The MBTA is doing this quite a bit across Massachusetts, where they're offloading what they consider excess property for a whole host of different reasons. The lot is 4.46 acres, and it's under agreement to be sold to us. We're closing with MBTA at the end of the month. We have a purchase and sale agreement that's been signed. They're going to continue to operate the property. We're going to have a permanent and perpetual easement with the MBTA. And as part of this arrangement, they've required that the purchaser keep 196 surface parking spaces together, and along with that comes some easements and partnership kind of agreements with the MBTA. So we have a maintenance agreement, for example, with them to maintain the lot, the striping and snow plowing and the like. They determined this number at MBTA through their own studies and what they wanted to keep on the site. That was before we ever got involved with the project. Just wanted to bring that up. This is located in the Village Business Overlay District under the current version of the Scituate zoning bylaw. Just to give you a brief overview of the project, but we'll be here and we'll go through it in more detail. The site consists of 78 units located in 4 three-story buildings, and up on here on the chart, the residential buildings are B, C, D, and E. Those are buildings A and B have retail and commercial space located in them. It's approximately in total we have 10,500 square feet of retail commercial space on the site. Building A is purely retail and commercial. Building B is split between residential and retail, and we have what we're calling the coffee shop up on the top of this plan here. You'll see. I just want to say that's a placeholder. We don't have. We've talked to different folks, but we don't have a tenant lined up for that space yet. So I just want to make that be known. The residences are a mixture of 27 one-bedroom and 51 two-bedroom units. Each of the proposed residential units have parking underneath, so there'll be spaces for the tenants in the building underneath the buildings. I think the two first, B and C, have 17 parking spaces, and E and D have 23 spaces underneath the buildings. The buildings meet all the height restrictions requirements of the town as well. We're able to achieve a lot of this because the lot has a really steep grade that goes up towards the transfer station. So It actually helps our site plan quite a bit. 196, I said, of the spaces of the 240 MBTA is requiring are on our site. There's 47,691 square feet of open space, which is again required by the town throughout the site. We are proposing to reconstruct Old Driftway and add parking, 17 and this has to be worked out with the town, clearly, I'm not, as a proposal, but add 17 public parking spaces on that, on the Old Driftway as well, which are not there currently. We've also been talking to the MBTA about reserving spaces on the lot, depending on what type of retail, commercial use we get on the site. They're very open to that, and they're certainly open to allowing parking, coming up with a deal to allow parking during off-peak hours for the lot as well. They understand that when people are out of work, this lot is basically empty. So we have talked to them about that. That will probably come as part of our maintenance agreement with the MBTA, but they're very much open to it. Buildings A and B are the closest to the MBTA. That's why we decided to locate our retail commercial there. Obviously, it's attractive for people getting off the T and they're commuting. Also, it allows, I think it's attractive for the storefronts to be on the street. We can give you the breakdown of those as well, but the Greenbush Plaza area, we're calling it, we really want to create a vibrant kind of sense of place there in Public Plaza. We'll show you some renderings we have of that in a few minutes. So the idea is to have a great mix of retail, commercial in that space around the plaza. We'll have seating for people to be sitting outside, bike racks, storefront. We want to make sure it's a really active and lively place. So, I mean, that's really our goal, is to have an interesting mix of uses there. We want to attract a whole bunch of different types of residents, but hopefully we can attract residents who are commuting into the city, obviously right on the train, hopping on the train in the morning, going to work. So, we're going to be pushing for that type of a tenant. The reality is what you'll see are a lot of empty nesters as well who want to locate here and live here. But we really want to make it an attractive spot for folks coming in, whether they're just staying in town or they're new to town, to take advantage of all the great things that Scituate has to offer. So that's why I mentioned the bikes and promoting the use of the waterways and everything else that we love about Scituate. As per the town guidelines, 15% of the units will be affordable. That's 12 units spread throughout all of the buildings, and it's a mix of, it's 4 one-bedroom, 8 two-bedroom units that we've designated. And I don't know if we want to break there. Jim, will you just show the renderings of the public spaces before I go on to the next piece? Okay. Do you mind? Who does that? And if you want to kind of speak to these as well.
It's not a good start when your pointer.
No.
Okay, this is the illustrative site plan. I'll get out of the way so folks can see it. But it shows finishes, surfaces, materials that delineate the travel ways and the roadways and the internal circulation, as well as the open space and the green areas and kind of the plaza areas. When you take the trees and everything off, and we've done this drawing, which is much easier to visualize and to understand in terms of the uses, and also the compliance with the local zoning for parking for the units. So this drawing shows North Road access up to the bulk of the MBTA parking in the east lot, as well as parking along North Road. This is a plan that we've gone back and forth with the MBTA and have worked out how they would manage their, surveying the cost to make sure everybody has their stickers and all those things. So it's all kind of put in one place. As John said, when we began, the project actually began with, this as one of the sites, if you'll remember the first time around. Then it kind of ultimately the RFP wound up saying, okay, we're going to sell the whole lot, but we get to keep most of it for parking. God bless the MBTA. And so we developed the plan, and what we really wanted to do was get a streetscape, but we recognized that this will never be Newberry Street because there's no connections on either end. So what we tried to do was create enough density with the retail to create our own place here. And we used the buildings A and B to form the physical shape of what we're calling our public space, our public plaza. So the concept is you can go out or you can sit in here, and we're hoping for some kind of a coffee shop or retail. That's what we'd like to see. So you can sit in here and look across and see the platform. And when it's time for the train to leave, you know, because you hear it and you see it. So you just simply walk across and get onto the platform. It's, I think what we tried to do is amplify and create a plan that was consistent with what you folks did in terms of creating a special district, because it's, you know, this is how planning should work, right? Here's a train, this is where you want the density, this is where you want the people. So we've tried to reinforce that with public space, kind of on you know, our piece of land, and define it by the retail wrapping around it and kind of making it a good place. So we did an elevation, and this elevation shows the dark line is the cut through the profile of Old Driftway. That's the exact roadway. And this is the site. As you all know, the site kind of climbs up precipitously in some places, from the low point down to the very end, up to the high point. So we've developed a build in terms of the buildings of being podium-based buildings where we can take advantage of the site. Where as we step up, we can come in underneath and have a podium with a retaining wall on the uphill side, columns on the front side. So if we have to, when we conform to the parking required for the units, we just run out of open space. You know, the cars take just a tremendous amount of space. So our plan, I think, actually works really well because we can use all of the space underneath the buildings, underneath the podiums, for parking for the residents above, which is kind of what you want in the weather of New England. So you can come from your unit above, go down through the core, and exit right into the garage. So you can park and you're on your way. So that works really well. So we then generated some sketches of the possibilities of how we would develop the public spaces that link the retail, the public, call it the public plaza, and the connections to the other buildings, D and E. These are walkways. This is the parking for the retail and the commercial, and some residential, but this is one sketch of kind of what we see as possibilities. This is building A, this is building B. The ground level of building B is retail space, and the ground level of building A is retail spaces. Okay, this is adjacent to the center way. So
I'm sorry, that's building,
A is to the right and B is to the left. It's the back side of the building.
yeah. Right.
oh, I see, we're standing behind it.
Correct.
Gotcha, sorry.
No,
This is the view
I'm
from
thinking,
the,
huh?
this is the view from the train.
Okay, let's start with, now the platform is behind my back. This is
Yeah.
this is the old redway coming here. So this is building A, this is building B. And the retail kind of wraps around the whole public space. And we're envisioning on that ground floor, you know, what would be ideal is a good place to eat, a good place for your family to go and get an ice cream, go out and sit in the piazza. A good place to service kind of the needs of the local residents as well as the town of Scituate. We see it being kind of connected to the train as much as we can. You get off the train and you're going to walk home and you're going to go over and maybe you're parked behind, so you grab some pre-prepared food and grab dinner on the way. Maybe you live up here, so that's pretty easy. You just go in and get food and go upstairs, you're home.
That retail is just on that one stretch of B. It's
Yes,
not all the way around the corner of B.
It's out back, too.
It wraps around. This is a sketch.
Reps, but it's just that one side.
It's the one corner of B, it runs, yes, front to back.
Gotcha.
It's easiest
Okay.
to read on this plan. See the crosshatch?
Yep.
That's total footprint for B, just this one piece that
Mhm.
that faces the
Thank you.
the piazza, as well as the street. So, and that's, we think, is important too. Here, in purple are the public parking spaces down off of Old Driftway. These access points through are showing landscape steps set into this green space. This remains green and planted, so if you're parking here, you don't have to battle out in the street, come around and walk up. You can just go through the landscape spaces, landscape areas. This is kind of a suggestion of how it might look.
Mhm.
Set the steps into the green space, and so you can walk directly up into the major side.
Jim, just to add one point, there was a suggestion made some time ago to us, which was to separate the cars from basically the pedestrians. This creates basically the sidewalks around the front and back, so again, the car is not, you won't have a car backing out into you while you're walking by. So
Yeah.
so that's how it
Really
surrounds the whole
important.
thing.
It'd be at the sidewalk and the plaza would be safe and park.
How many spaces did you say it was along the street?
Right now, I think we have
17?
17?
Yeah.
Yep. So we don't show on these plans, obviously, but it's come up in the informal hearings with the board, is obviously signage being, essential, and our landscaping plan is not complete yet, as you know. But safety was a concern, is our concern, is a concern of everyone on the board, and how you get around the site, having things clearly marked, having when cars are exiting the buildings, having, notification that they're coming out, sound and signage, and, that all is part of the plan, needs to be worked out, but we're aware of that as a concern.
Jim, you may also want to point out on the other buildings, we have space for, public space there for the residents too, as well as basically around the market area, or the village area.
Yeah, public outdoor space that's dedicated to them. I mean, others aren't refraining from going there, but, and those are, there's a broad sidewalk, with green space, and then down also, South Wayne connects up to Center Way. That's basically the residual parking from the retail, commercial, and some of the residential, so. This is pedestrian circulation that also links back down to Old Driftway, kind of directly to if you're in a hurry and you come out of building D and E or B and C, you can just come across here and go right to the platform. I think it's an efficient pedestrian circulation plan, and it meets the requirement for open space.
One quick question. Do you have, between retail F and the MBTA parking, are you putting another curb cut onto the Driftway?
Yes.
Okay.
This,
Right here.
that's it. This is
No.
the existing?
No, that's the existing, it's right,
Out here?
see?
Oh, so that's the circulation for the drive-through?
Yes. Exactly. And that still, this was the kind of the initial concept, where if you come off Driftway, this is through the through lane. that
It's a
directs
one-way,
into-
right.
One way. But we can queue up here, we can order coffee and go around and you can pick it up. And these are the spaces for when they screw up and you can pull in and go yell and get your coffee, right? So, but this is done kind of for planning to make sure that we can do it. Because the driveways, drive-throughs are difficult to make sure that they work.
But David Black's here, he can speak to the traffic, because we're doing the traffic studies.
Well, I think that if, I have this thing about traffic and ways and so on.
Okay, Jim.
Oops. At any rate,
I think Jim's done.
if you, that is a one-way in off of the Driftway,
Yes.
and then you're going to scoot around, you have some parking spaces there, I would suggest that you make that a one-way out with a right turn only.
To here.
Yes, no left turn
Yeah.
at all.
You know, the top of the hill is here, so to what you're saying is, you know, if the safe way would be to take the right.
Only right,
Yeah.
no left turns.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. David, you might want to speak, I mean, just.
Yeah, I think, first of all, just by way of background, I'm David Black from VHB. I've been doing traffic engineering and transportation planning for about 45
Can you
years.
push the mic over? Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Just by way of background, I've been doing traffic engineering and transportation planning for more years than I want to admit. It's about 45. 30 years of those have been on this side of the Atlantic. And John was actually my very first client, so I've been working with him for many years. He literally met me off the boat and showed me which side of the road to drive on. So we've done a fairly detailed traffic study for the project based on the current program and the illustrative site plan. VAI has done a very thoughtful review of our study, peer review, and certainly highlighted some of the things that we are aware we need to walk through, such as the drive-through and how that will operate, and is there enough room for queuing, and should the turns out of the site be restricted to right turn only. So we're absolutely coming at this with a very open mind. The site plan needs to be fully engineered. Each driveway needs to operate not just easily from a capacity point of view, but from a safety point of view. And as always, and certainly with all projects I've worked on with the Drew Company, we will be making sure that everything is designed to appropriate standards and to include fire access and everything like that. I won't go into detail about the results of our study. It was fairly comprehensive. We appreciate the review that VAI has carried out, and I think we will be tweaking what we've done to get it as close as possible to respond as well as possible to those questions. I don't know, I sort of interrupted you, Jim. I don't know if you were...
Can I ask you a question just about the visual which we saw, the retail section, but if you move down the sidewalk and you're looking at the residential sections, and when I say the sidewalk, I mean on Old Driftway, are we going to be looking at the parking garages?
What we've shown is the our answer to that problem, which is a problem when you drive by. There's a lot of podiums for driving from Scituate into Boston. You go through Weymouth and Quincy. And a lot of buildings are built that way. The parking's underneath the building below. And you look in and you see the soffit of the garage ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
You see all the junk hanging down in the lights, and it's never thought out because the budget doesn't go that far typically.
Mm-hmm. So
it's awful. So what we've shown is this elevation. This is retail, and then from here on, this is foyer and lobby. And these green areas are the openings that are into the parking area. And what we're proposing is at the face of the building to show a screen detail you've seen all this, these screens that are built to hold vines as they grow up the side of buildings. What we're gonna do is do a light steel structure across that opening that's open. And we're gonna put a screen on it, and then we're gonna plant Boston ivy along the base. And Boston ivy's a great plant. It just goes up and fills out, and it looks good, kind of basically all year round. And we're having our engineers, mechanical engineers, give us their assessment and quantify the amount of open space that, excuse me, not open space, but the amount of air that can flow through. It's not a wall, it would be a green wall. So we're thinking that would be a really nice solution, to see growing green, year-round green, and still let the air flow through.
So you should not be able to see in, is what should happen. The green wall should, there would be a solid wall or green wall that should stop you from seeing in. So the parking would be behind that.
All right. May I move on to have the board ask questions?
Of course.
And then open it up to the public?
Okay.
Okay? All right, I'll start with the town planner.
Well, we have our traffic consultant here too. Would you like him to say
Sure.
a few words?
Thank you.
Mr. Durr?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm a partner with Van Essen Associates, and I'm sure we're your review consultant. Excuse my back. So we've had a chance to review the plans and materials that have been submitted to the project, and I think, kind of as the chair had indicated at the beginning, and I think you heard from the development team, this is a project that's in flux, and I think if you look at my comments, what you basically see is now we got to bring everything together. There are things in the traffic study that need to match up with the site plans. The site plans need to be engineered. So what you'll see is there's, in my comments, I would kind of have the applicant take those as guidance on terms of what we would expect to see in the next submission of the documents that come before you. I'll start with the site plan. I think from the standpoint of what you see, it really needs, there's a lot of great concepts, and I think the project itself has a lot of excellent attributes to it. And now we need to engineer this plan. So I think as we're looking at this, we need to make sure, obviously, as the applicant has said, we need to make sure vehicles can access and circulate within the site. Thinking about things of loading and delivery, how do the fire trucks get in here? How does that all happen in the environment that they're having with on-street parking and everything, which creates the village atmosphere that they're talking about, but now we need to bring it to the functional level. So where are the loading zones? What size trucks are we talking about when they get into the driveways themselves? So that's all going to come as a part of the engineering of the plan. The other thing that we have to look at as well is this, I had not seen the zoning compliance plan, so we've asked that they develop what you typically see as your zoning compliance chart. So we need to see, does the parking comply with your zoning standards? The one thing that was of concern to us, we understand this concept of shared parking here, is that we know that there's great access to public transportation, but as you get away from the urban core, parking for residential, when you start getting below 1.5, that's a low parking ratio. And I think what they've got here, just looking at the residential piece, is somewhere around 137 or so, which again, the reality of residential as you get in the suburban area is just thinking simply of, I need to go grocery shopping, there's not a grocery store here. So even though I may leave my car here and jump on the train and go to work, that's great, but I still, when I come home, we need to think about how are the residents getting to do those normal daily things, which starts to get us to a parking ratio of somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 for the residential. So it's great if they can do mixed use some of these parking spaces, but we'll need to be able to see through some analysis that they'll provide to say they're achieving those parking ratios, because that's, you really need between 1.5 and 1.7 to make the residential functional. If you don't have that, what you start to see is then where they're designated the retail, those will end up being residential. This retail starts pushing over into the commuter. So it starts having this cascading effect. Again, I'm sure they can figure it out. We just need to be able to see the numbers that relate to that. The other thing in the site plan itself, and I think some of the members had pointed this out, is that we're creating an additional curb cut on Old Driftway, but we're not only doing that, we're also, and it doesn't show up well on this plan here, but if you have an overall site plan, what you see is the current access into this parking lot that lines up with the egress from the existing lot is now being moved. So not only are we adding a curb cut, but now what we're having is 2 curb cuts that are offset from the exit from the parking lot. So we've asked the applicant to just explain to us how that's going to operate and undertake what they describe as a safety analysis, because this creates conflicting turning movements coming out of these lots. And again, if you picture the train comes out, everyone gets in the car and they're leaving, the interaction of those exiting movements for these now offset driveways needs to be thought out a little bit more as well. Lastly, in looking at the plan, you were mention of this coffee shop as a placeholder. There's a lot of implications related to that coffee shop, as you probably know. Not only the queuing, which we've asked the applicant to go back and look at as well, the way that we generate traffic numbers from mixed-use developments changes as well. So the way that this has been done is it's assumed that all of the retail space is just classified as just general retail, and it's analyzed as a shopping center, which when you have a large amount of retail space, that makes a lot of sense. With a small amount of retail space, and one of them being a drive-through operation, it starts not to have those traffic characteristics, and what you end up having is this use here will end up generating more traffic just in and of itself than this small amount of retail space. So that has significant implications in terms of the net increase in traffic, but I think more importantly, how this driveway functions and how this driveway will function. We've asked the applicant to take a look at this driveway, and I know that you've had some comments on that as well. We're very concerned with how this will operate, especially having an entering lane next to a drive-through lane. And then as you imagine kind of coming into the site, there's a significant conflict point that happens here as you're merging one-way traffic entering a drive-through lane that wraps around the building, two-way traffic on the drive aisle here. If you start to look at all of those, you're just drawing arrows kind of on a plan, what you see is a convergence of a lot of things happening in that area there. So if this is going to be a coffee shop placeholder, this portion of the site needs to have a lot more thought in terms of how it's going to circulate within the site. So that's kind of a general overview of our comments. Again, we basically, the applicant should take these as guidance, because we know that they're engineering the plan, so we don't want to spend a lot of time talking about deficiencies, because you're not going to have those. I think at the end of the day, we want a plan that functions. So really, this is more guidance, I think, and we'll come back with something that should address the comments. We're very confident.
Thank you.
Could I ask you a question? Just because I didn't wade through all 150 pages or whatever was there. Did this address the peak loading issue when the trains let out?
It did, in terms of the peaking numbers. So when
there were calculations, I mean, there were measurements and that kind of stuff for it?
There are. When they do their traffic counts, one of the things that gets reported is a peaking factor. So as they're doing the counts, they make sure that what they're capturing is when the train's letting out, because as I think sure everyone's very familiar, the peaking factor that happens during that instantaneous time is very significant and creates a lot of congestion in the area until that kind of flushes itself out. As they do some more development and analysis on the site plan, these access points, we'll start to kind of suggest, and they may actually come back with suggestions for some improvements. And we've kind of offered some initial thoughts on that, but we need to see some of this final analysis before we can provide a more comprehensive list to you. But it will deal with some of that peaking, and in particular the signalized intersection here and how that experiences the peaking. Because obviously that influences, it has an influence on how the road operates. It'll influence on how access to the site happens as well. We're also very concerned with pedestrians and bicycles, because that queuing and the idea of being able to now have residential here, we're going to have a lot more pedestrian activity happening because we know the lots underutilized. That queuing has impacts in terms of how the driveway operates, but also sight lines for pedestrians who are trying to cross the road.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, anything else? Okay. Rebecca?
I just had a question. I just want to make sure I understood you guys right. You're going to own the property, but the MBTA is going to have an easement on it, or what? You said it in the very first thing, and I just...
Correct. We have a maintenance agreement. They have rights to those spaces, so we have to maintain those spaces for them.
But
as part of the ownership.
you will own the property.
Correct.
Okay.
It's pretty, I think, unusual for the MBTA, but that's what they require.
Okay.
Ben?
I'm going to keep my questions relatively general at this point in the process, but I guess the first question would be, I know I didn't sound like there's a representative from MBTA here, but I'm just curious as to kind of their rationale, if you know, on how they determined that this was excess land or property. I guess my it's not a concern, but a thought that I have is that I'm all for like Greenbush being a village center and everything, but I also recognize that Greenbush is the terminus of the line, and I wonder over time how population growth in the South Shore in general might impact the amount of people that are going to need to access the train at the end of the line, and if maybe this means a parking garages in the future or something. But I didn't know if you guys had more info on that.
We can get it for it. That we can definitely provide it. I mean, I think
They did some extensive studies, and it was, I can tell you, I don't have all the info either with John, but we've been through meetings with the MBTA team, including the parking specialist. They've vetted exactly what they need on parking, and that's why they were selling the property. So there was a pretty thorough piece of work that was done. We have also discussed a couple of other things, which is in the event that they needed additional spaces, could you put in fact structured parking? The answer is yes. And we've even talked to a company that does a lift company, which in fact takes spaces. You drive your car in, the car gets basically put into a slot for you and various things like that. So there's a variety of ways of doing garages today that would make it more attractive. You could have less land to basically park more cars, for example. So we've discussed that. They've also discussed the in a very broad way, if we, in 10 or 15 years, have cars that basically drive themselves, what happens to parking and parking garages, which quite frankly means they have fewer parking spaces and fewer parking garages. So that's kind of blue skying it, but I think they've been, to give them credit, I think the idea of what they're doing with their space, with their lots around Greater Boston has been very, very thoroughly examined by them, so.
It's probably public record, but we'll find it. I'm sure they had to produce what the analysis. It's part of the RFP, they had rationale.
Sure, yeah. Okay, that's helpful. And then my only other question at this time is, I guess, to the designers of the project. Could you talk to me a little bit about the rationale for the split between retail, commercial, and residential units? I guess in terms of the percentages and how everything, and also, so I guess that's the two. Part of it's to the developer, and part of it's to the urban designer, I guess.
Yes. Obviously, the town's requirements are fairly straightforward in terms of how retail mixes as part of the mixed use with residential, in terms of what's needed, the dimensions of the retail spaces that face public space, street fronts. So we followed those criteria in designing A and B. We wanted the retail center to be, as we said, closest to the direct access to mainly the platforms. So we kind of loaded it on this end. We did a design for the building that kind of comes out front and makes a presence architecturally with a kind of a pitched roof, a 12 pitched roof, and pyramidal, and with a little skylight on top, a monitor wrapping around, thinking that at night that would kind of light up and kind of designate here's the retail. As you're coming down Old River, you can see that at the end, so we think that's a positive thing. So, and the other thing is there's only so much retail that we think the site and the area can support. So we didn't want to diminish it and kind of put it in multiple places. We thought it would be best if it was concentrated. That's how we got to building A being retail and commercial above, office spaces above, professional offices, and integrating it into building B on the plaza side on the ground floor. So we thought we kind of achieved a good mix based on what we see as the right amount of retail for the site.
We did do studies for the site. First of all, the site, even though it looks enormous sometimes, it's pretty constrained in terms of where you can actually build and what you can build there. We did look at, for a period of time, at the residential building C. We always have to preserve our pro forma as well to get it built, but we did look at could that have another use, and could we still support the same number of units? And we were talking to some potential tenants about, exploring if that made some sense, and it didn't work out for the site. But there is a limit to the amount of retail you can put on I think, the site, just to make it viable. And we tried to keep the space. We have a couple of ideas on who we'd want to put in some of these spaces and the uses, and these sizes actually are the right size. And then the commercial in Building A is just a natural fit because it's another story above, so that doesn't make sense for retail.
Right.
So it started off with our vision of what we hope is going to end up there, but then obviously working out the numbers, it dictates a little bit how much we could put in there, and how much risk we take on.
I would also add, quite frankly, this is meant to be complementary to what you have already.
Yeah.
It's not there's always going to be a certain amount of competition, but the fact is, this amount, I think, is additive and it works out, but it's not meant to, in fact, take people away from other merchants who are in the town. So, we look at the proximity to we look at this being as a more casual, people coming in and out, going from train, as well as residents here, utilizing that sitting area. We want to make that attractive because we think people will spend some time there. But the upstairs would be for offices, doctor's office, whatever it might be, and various things like that, which we think, again, is fine and would in fact not detract from what you already have. So we paid some attention to it. And it's following your guidelines. It's meant to be mixed use. It's not meant to be commercial, in preponderance of commercial, put it that way, in retail. So we think we're trying to follow that. And from a pro forma perspective, I think rental housing is something that is not prevalent in the town or in the area. And as Jim pointed out, one of the things that we looked at was with the back and forth to Boston, it's a good place to live and get on the train and go back to work if you're working in Boston. It's also a very interesting place if you think about people who own homes who get older, like myself, who want to stay in the area, and what's their choice if they want to sell their home and stay in the area. They don't have a lot of choices available to them. So, this creates some choice, too. So hopefully people can utilize that choice to stay here and also come out of the larger home. So, there's a mix of ideas in that.
We did meet with local business owners as well as part of the Greenbush visioning meeting. So there was a real concern that we weren't going to be kind of cannibalizing their business. So we're mindful of everything that's around here as well, and looking for different uses that I think as a resident might be beneficial to the town as well.
All right, thanks.
Steve?
Yeah, I have a few. I'll try to avoid too many detailed questions here and just get sort of the broad brush. But one of the things that I appreciate is that you've built in affordable housing into this component, and I think that's very important here in town. It's very difficult to find affordable housing. A couple things. Have you, has any of this sort of architecturally been reviewed with the design review committee? Nothing? Okay, so that's probably a step we're going to want you to take. How about infrastructure? I know there was a fairly involved process on the sewer. If you could just sort of give an overview of that, and then also on water.
I'll start it, and then I'll have the folks from Horsley Witten do a better job of explaining what we did in terms of that. But yeah, that was part of the, and there was the recommendation of this board to go back to the selectmen to work out, the infrastructure and the sewer. So that process took many months and was very thorough. We undertook at our own expense a review of I&I and other options for the town for projects, knowing that there was going to be a betterment fee associated with this project. We came to terms with the selectmen on the betterment fee, which is $239,000. But I think a real positive story to tell here is that our project, working with the town submitted for a Mass Works grant that you were awarded back in October. And our project was, I think, very much key to helping the town win that grant. In order to get approval for the MassWorks grants, you have to have a certain type of project connected to it. So we worked hand in hand with the town in submitting that, and I think it was awarded in October, and it's a $2.2 million grant to the town that will go towards, I think, an existing project that's already been lined up and the town has voted on, but that frees up, a lot of money for the town, I think, as well. So we did look at, though, the flows, and in order to get to that, that agreement on the betterment amount as well, and I don't know.
It frees up, as I recall, that frees up capacity for the.
And we looked at, we were asked by the town.
We don't need additional capacity.
Well, we were asked by the town to look at additional, so we actually did 20% more on top of what the outflows would be for the project. And I don't know if you guys want to add anything? No?
Yeah, I think you got it. I mean, unless you want to go over detail about the flows, what the flows.
No, I just wanted to get the overview so everybody could hear what, because infrastructure in this town is still a key issue, right? So
Huge.
Wanted to make sure we had that.
My understanding on that is that the 2.2 million frees up 2.2 million for the town, and it allows that whole project to go forward.
No, I think it was a good thing for the town. So, what about water? Has there been a discussion about capacity?
No, we have not discussed capacity yet. We plan to work with the DPW and the water department to go through that. So that's on our checklist of things to do.
We have a.
Karen? We are going to be setting up meetings with the DPW and internally so that we can discuss what they need. They're going to be coming up with a checklist of information they need from the town, and then we'll be providing that, and then we'll be meeting with them.
Yeah, I'm more interested in how what they need ties into our overall capacity availability and, ties into our overall water capacity study as well.
That will be part, I believe.
So I just want to make sure that you're sensitized to that, okay? From a, I just got a couple more. From a construction point of view, it's like when you build this thing, assuming we get through all approvals and stuff, what's the sequence of construction here in terms of these facilities? How soon before the retail's available, that kind of thing?
We're not talking about phasing the project at all. But in terms of the sequencing, we're honestly, we're between two companies right now, and they're competing for the business. I think as part of our next, by the next meeting, we'll have that company on board, and we'll have the whole site.
But not a phasing then?
No, we're planning on opening the whole.
Run into the issue before where people built all the residential and didn't.
No, we're not.
Retail, so.
No, I don't think the residential works here really well. It's not the commitment we're making to the town, but I think part of the draw here for the residential is to have that area built.
I mean, we have to create an ambiance here. The reason we're talking about the shopping area and also the seating areas and whatnot is today it's barren. And
go there every day, I know. But it just tends to be a hot button issue for us. That's why I bring it up, right?
No, but I mean, for us, it would defeat the project. It would be.
I appreciate that.
The wrong thing to do.
Yeah, we're happy to. We'll have that in place by the next.
I guess the other thing, and I know we'll get into this, but things like sort of light pollution and noise mitigation and those kind of things for the surrounding residences and stuff we'll want to address at some point in time.
We'll definitely address that. The noise pollution piece is something we're looking at just as we, in the design of the buildings for the people living there, for example, because of the noise from train. Our neighbors are concerned about, and we're certainly going to talk to neighbors about making sure that our people understand what exists there now, and that's something that we take into account as part of our leasing.
Yep.
The light piece, we don't think we're a big generator of light. I think the issue of light is going to be working with the MBTA, and for us, working with the MBTA on the lighting of the additional parking around us.
Yep.
in what they're doing. So we've already begun those discussions with
Yeah,
them.
that's kind of, I was thinking
Yeah,
about
it's-
both
it's
ways.
kind of- It kind of comes at us as opposed to what
People
we.
live there
Yeah.
and whether they're going to see
They
light.
have a
Yeah.
certain requirement for the lighting of that east lot, which it's not necessarily, a residential look and feel and lighting, so
Yeah.
we're working with them on that.
One other thing, or a couple of things, this little diagram is quite helpful in terms of how you laid it out, and what it sort of starkly, I think, points out is how nice this side will look and how sort of barren the other side of the street's going to look.
Yeah.
And so we may want to think about, and maybe this is sort of in conjunction with the DPW, but, how do we think about sort of improvement of the connection to the train platform itself? But, and then, trail connections, that was the other thing. I know there's walkways through this area, and I just wondered whether you guys actually looked at that as to whether connections, and maybe the only connections down the driftway itself, but.
I think we're working with, on our landscaping plan as well. That's come up a number of times, and we're definitely conscious of trying to connect to all the different, plans. I don't think we've kind of finalized that yet, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I would just add one thing on it, which is that we are aware of all those connections. John's been working on that, but how you cross basically Driftway.
Yep.
And safely, I think is something that
That's easy.
we're thinking about. If you look down by Building C, that's a crosswalk showing there to a sidewalk, which is on the parking side of the street, the MBTA side of the street.
Yeah.
That brings it to a light. That's right now the safest way to cross. So when we think about bike connections and things like that and trails, I think that's presently how we have to think about how you cross.
And the parking along the street is going to be for the retail? It's not, it's not going to be a train parking spot or anything?
No, they're going to be, we have to work this out too, but it's going to be 2-hour parking or something
Yeah.
along those lines. It's not intended to have someone from the train parking.
I like the concept of being able to pull in and out like that and feel more like a village, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, I monopolized.
To tie on to Steve's point for design review, we have another very large development right around the corner. And this doesn't look anything like that, and that doesn't look anything like this. And so as we go through a planning process here, and we talk about coffee shops, and we have a lot of coffee shops now, which I don't want to see anymore. And that's something that, we need something that goes all day. So I did take a train ride on the North Shore. It got off at all the Rockland and whatnot. And they have very well-planned commuter stops. And it's nice. You can go food shopping, you can get, there's a paper store, there's a liquor store, there's a dry cleaner. It's a real village, what North Scituate used to look like.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, that's what it looked like. And I'm hoping that this encompasses more than like a coffee shop. I mean, to the point that if you lived here, well, you would hope that you wouldn't need a car as an option. So is there some place to go get bread and milk?
That's,
That's like in the old days, like a Builders would be in Cohasset, a very small upscale food store.
Yep.
I'm looking, that's what I would be looking for in this retail design, is a one-stop shopping that we can keep everything there and not just be overpopulated with coffee shops and dry cleaners.
we agree.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely.
Or real estate
A
agents.
real estate agent.
Or insurance company.
Yes, or financial planners.
And banks.
Bank.
Put them on the second floor.
No, that's always been, when I talk, going back to the retail, that was always our vision, is to have something that, where people can grab and go, or there's a small shop. I mean, there's a place in Marblehead called Shoebies.
Yeah.
Jim, didn't you
Love Shoebies,
build
yeah.
your, yeah, I'm a North Shore guy originally too. But, that's where we started with that first Building A and that type of a, environment.
That
So-
makes more sense than a coffee shop.
Yeah, a
Or a
Shoebies is.
sandwich shop.
Yeah.
Way more sense.
Yeah, a Shoebies is a perfect example of what kind of a little store that you'd be looking for like that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I want to hear from everybody else, but just a couple of things. One is I want to make sure that, given the changes in elevations, that I got handicap access all the way through.
Yes.
Convenient, not that I have to go around the building and over the hill and,
Correct.
right, so at some point, you're going to have to explain that all to me.
Sure.
Two, building B is a real problem for me, because I have trouble looking at the flow and how it's going in and out. I don't need an answer now, but I think you need to look at that. Right, and I think the rest of the points that I have, Steve pretty much covered. Looking at the timing of the,
All set?
close enough.
All right. Okay, I'm going to reserve my comments or whatever until later. I will recognize whoever raises their hand. Please identify yourself, name and street address. Mike Hayes.
Mike Hayes, 35 Allen Place, Scituate, Mass. And just real quick, and I do want to say I am not opposed to this project at all. But however, I do have some concerns. I agree with Ben, and I think it was very short-sighted of the MBTA to start selling this parking lot. I think they're going to need more parking down the road. I'm also concerned that, and this is a town-wide issue, especially with the new proposed zoning, is that developers are not required to look long-term as to the traffic effects on Greenbush over the long term. If we go project by project by project, the first group in is going to have an advantage over everybody else. And I think that's, in my opinion, wrong. I agree with Bill, that just from a quick look at this, it looks like while the retail spaces are geared to the residents, what are you going to have, 150 or so residents up there? Your renters are going to want to get the public there between 8:30 a.m. and 4 o'clock, and I don't see that as a destination place for the residents of Scituate. And I agree with Bill again, that from looking at this, there needs to be a lot of work done on handicap access. Curb cuts and step rises to get to grade do not help handicap people. Parking that's more than 50 feet from retail or commercial spaces certainly don't help handicap people. So I urge the developers to look at those issues, and the board to look at the long-range traffic for this area. Finally, I say this, it's my own personal opinion, I'm here not here for any clients or anybody I work with or anything like that, but over 40 years of appearing before this board. If I came in representing clients with this much lack of information and an incomplete filing application, would be laughed at.
Yeah, I believe I addressed that, Mike. You are absolutely right, okay? I'm not going to argue with you or tell you that you're incorrect.
So I had a question then, and I realize this isn't a big investment. What is the financial cutoff for future developers to come in where you'll get a pass on having complete plans? My own personal opinion is this is a fine discussion you're having tonight. It's more suited for informal discussion than the first night of a public hearing on a project.
Thank you, Mike. Your point is well taken, okay?
Sitska Humphrey, and I live at 8 Lads Way, which is James Landing. Having gone to Brazilian Scituate meetings, the concern kept on being raised about this area, the Greenbush area, being a dead spot or a hot spot in the town. And it kind of ties in with your comments as well. My concern is that the plans did not show any different green space than what's already there currently, which is not enough to go and have a healthy living environment. And my second concern is looking down the road with traffic patterns and even hearing it being said, the death of a community is once you start building parking garages. You look at Worcester, you look at Quincy, the garages there. Once you start getting into parking garages, you get a very different flavor. And it may not be next year, it may not be 5 years from now, but it may be 10 years from now. And so I'm really concerned about that component. And then finally, question that I have is with electric cars, are these houses going to be built, these apartments going to be built with electrical components to go and charge up your cars? But I am concerned concerned about the green part, and I'm also very glad to hear you say, Ms. Lambert, that we have enough coffee shops. The traffic that is being generated and backed up by the current Dunkin' Donuts is very tough to deal with, and I think the same is going to happen with where, where the new, I don't know what it's called, I think the new bagel shop is also going to happen. So the last thing we need is another coffee shop.
Thank you. There was a gentleman in the back corner that...
John McLaughlin, 160 Turner Road. My issue kind of blends with everybody so far. I'm more focused on levitation, where the term means if you move here and you're a young couple and you raise your children, you can live here and retire here and live the whole duration. So that means the house should be ADA compliant, the street, and how the street bridges the next street, the next community, or the next neighborhood. And that's the problem we have. They don't bridge together correctly. You don't do short term and long term. For example, we have issues about snow removal. You pack it up, put it over here, it's going to melt, it's going to go right into where people are maybe handicapped, looking to fall. You don't have it, even the small details maps it out. Parking can be an issue anywhere. But in regards to accessibility in and out, just from the street alone, that's how, if I evaluate something, I start from the outside in. And I need to make sure that when we say curb cut, you need an ADA compliant curb cut. And the ratio of 112 or 0.83% really doesn't work well. We're a town, we should try to pass a law to make it even more stringent. So it might be, for example, 115 or 0.06%. This is harder. Even coming into this building, I had some help, and I almost flipped over because coming in the building alone wasn't ADA compliant.
Thank you. Your points are really well taken. And I have written down here, in one of my notes is snow removal and where it's going to go.
You've done before. You're fantastic. You work well together. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Frank Kilduff, 125 Chief Justice Cushing. I have a couple of questions. One is a general question, which is who is going to manage this entire project once it's built? Will it be a single manager who then leases, subleases, or what's the plan?
That's a good question.
The second question I have is whether given the fact that we've all been under, at times, mandatory water restrictions, there's no reason to believe that's going to change in the near future, even if the reservoir is raised. And we've all been paying for a sewer system we can't connect to. Will the individual units that are rented have individual meters and will they be charged the same as we're all charged currently, even though they'll be able to hook up to it and we will not? The third issue is a general one, which is people who, like myself, live in that general area. We're under siege at the moment. There's so many new developments in the general area that the question I have is there a limit? Is there a point where you say, okay, now we've built as much as this area can stand? Or is it like the traffic thing where as long as the vehicles can move, it's not critical?
You are on the mark with that. We really do need to look at traffic overall, how it will affect. I've seen the traffic backed up when, what was it, the Polar Express. You couldn't move. It was unbelievable. And that could happen more and more. The Rotary, people sometimes drive the wrong way on the Rotary. It happens. Change is coming, and we have to work with it, and we have to make sure that it works for us so that we can be proactive with all of this. Your questions and your concerns are excellent, and a list is being made, will be submitted to the applicants, and I understand that this was an incomplete submission. However, it will be complete when all is said and done. We will make sure that traffic is spread out further than this particular development. Ben has asked about the MBTA and their infinite wisdom and what they're doing. North Scituate, where I work, the lot by the WPA building is now almost full. Why? Because people have figured out that it's free. That's what they figured out, it's free. So who is to say? And now you have $10 round trip on weekends on the T. So we'll make this work. We do need apartments, we do need affordability. We will try to come to some type of a consensus. We won't please everybody, but we will try to make this the best project that it possibly can be. And someone asked, well, when is enough enough? It's all driven by the economy. It's driven by money. That's basically the bottom line. If people have the money, and if they meet the rules and regulations, and they give to get, it goes forward. So, and then some people in Greenbush will have the opportunity, they're already looking into it. They're seeing dollar signs, that if they are able to sell their property and make money and head wherever, they're going to do it. And more power to them, that's what it's all about. So, enough of that. Yes?
Heather Clark, 60 Brockton Ave. I'd like to just return for a moment to the water resource question. I think everybody here is concerned about water, and we found some water a few years ago. I'm wondering if, as part of the upcoming study and recommendations, if we can talk seriously about requirements around water conservation, what sorts of design arrangements are going to be made, what sorts of savings are going to be integrated into this design so that this apartment complex does not become a huge water sink. And I'd like irrigation limitations built into that. I too really love to see green space there. I think the idea of green growing on the facade of the building sounds lovely, but that also has to do with water. And we know that this is a sand pit, and the water is just going to go into it the more you know. So I'm very concerned about water usage. My second question, also around resources, is what sort of design arrangements and accommodations are made to around issues around solar and energy conservation? Are we talking about a design here that's very 21st century and will be a green building or net zero, or any of these things that are possible to do now in green buildings? And I'm wondering if this building is going to have any of those features.
We will find out.
Yes, is the answer.
The answer is yes, we plan on doing that, we'll
All
present
right.
that.
Yes, sir.
Tom Hildoff, 108 Tilden Road. Two suggestions for a meeting in the future: that someone from the MBTA be present, getting some questions that might come up, rather than go through a developer. I'd like to hear directly from the MBTA. Second is for the audience who's viewing these posters and drawings, it's really difficult, and that you make it available so people can see it while the discussion is being conducted.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, hi, my name is John Tedeschi. I'm a director butter of the project, and I'd like to be on the record in support of this project. But I have many concerns, which I've spoken with John briefly on, being a lot of the engineering, water, utilities, those sort of things. I don't know if you
John, where, just, I don't mean to interrupt, I just want to know where you abut. I don't know.
I am actually the shaded white area to the right.
Yes, Celtic Pause.
Celtic Pause, okay, gotcha, thank you.
So I have many concerns, most of them being drainage and water runoff. Right now, as present, the entire parking lot drains over to my property, and all the drainage structures are actually on my property. It was taken, or the MBTA thought that they took the land in land taking when they built the property, and I bought the property from the town of Scituate, and lo and behold, I bought the entire parcel and notified the MBTA that they had a parking lot on half an acre of my property that had already been designed and built. So that's why an awful lot of that parking lot is on my land, and I would say 90% of the drainage is on my property and a good portion of the lighting as well. As I said, I do support this project. I myself am going to be designing and building a building very soon. I think it's sort of hit the fast track now, and I think it's very important that we work hand in hand and design something that fits for both parties. And I really look forward to working with the Drews and trying to make the best project for the town of Scituate. And that being said, I do have many concerns, but we'll work them out. And this is the start of a process.
Yes, it is.
I'm very familiar with the process, if you all know.
Yes.
And it's day one. And I look forward to this happening in the future. I think it's positive for the town.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Will there be any set-aside jobs for residents of Scituate in constructing this job, and will it be prevailing wage?
There's no set aside for Scituate, you're talking about construction jobs?
Yes.
As I understand it, there's no set aside, I mean, we haven't picked the construction company yet. I don't know where the people who work for both these construction companies.
But that can be made a condition of your contract with any contractor that you can simply say that it's a requirement that.
Well, actually, I'm not sure that I agree or even really disagree with what you're saying. This is private.
Yeah.
I could understand your point if it were public.
No, I'm not saying that they, what I'm saying is that if you desire so to do it, it can be done. I'm not saying that it's legally required. I'm asking if that's their intention.
Well, I think that that's a discussion that you might want to have with them privately.
What about prevailing wage?
You're gonna, the project will be built literally as a non-union project. I think, I would tell you, I think everyone who's gonna be working on a construction site in this area is gonna be paid the prevailing wage. I don't know of any, I honestly don't know of anyone working construction in eastern Massachusetts, union or not union, it's not being, properly compensated.
There are a lot of undocumented.
All right.
Oh,
we're
that we're not doing
going-
undocumented.
We're not
working
going
with-
down that road at this moment. Please.
I'm simply responding to the statement.
Please. Thank you. Thank you. All right, anything else from anybody? Yes, sir.
Charles Stevo, 60 New Driftway. I hate to keep talking about parking, but that 8,000 square foot of potential office space, are the parking spots calculated for that?
Yes. Yes, there are. Okay. All right, it is, yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Jerry McDonald. I'm on 60 New Driftway also. Excuse me. I'm getting confused. I'm on 60 New Driftway, and I can see the sign saying Old Driftway. Where is the Old Driftway and the New Driftway? I haven't looked into it.
Well, I have two pieces of paper in front of me. One says Old Driftway, and another one says New Driftway. So who is to say?
Well, I guess you can answer the question.
As far as I'm concerned, what goes,
My next question is going to be, I'm concerned about handicapped access myself, and we have parking spaces on Old Driftway, which I think might be New Driftway, because I don't know, right? So now, you're going to have handicapped people getting out of the car on the Driftway, which is a main thoroughfare. It's not a side street. And so people that are handicapped have to get out of their cars into the onto the
no,
road.
no, that's not happening.
Old
There's
Drift,
parking on the street.
That's on
That's
the, either Old or New Driftway, depending, that
Which
runs,
one's which was my question.
Okay.
I didn't answer.
I can clarify.
thank you.
New Driftway is the main driftway. Old Driftway is in between the two parking lots.
Okay.
okay.
Thank you very much.
The parking is...
That was very easy, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
The parking is on Old Driftway, in between the two parking lots.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Morse?
Craig Morse, 167 Tack Factory, Pond Drive. The town is looking at changing zoning in Greenbush, specifically with the overlay district. If that is adopted at our spring town meeting, how would this affect this project?
It wouldn't, because this is pretty much what the overlay, the new overlay district is looking for. So it would not affect it, really. So, Ben?
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, there's case law on that, right? If the hearing's been opened.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, we can't,
It's already
the
been
zoning's
grandfathered.
frozen.
Right, but this falls in line with what we are looking to,
No, it's not.
it isn't?
It's not?
There's an applicability portion in the new zoning bylaw. So if you read the new zoning, if you look under section 580, there's an applicability portion.
Which means what?
It means if you apply before April 1st, then it doesn't apply, and you get a project successfully approved.
Yes.
But one more point on that specific issue, again, it reinforces my concerns that an incomplete application was made, and someone could argue that it was done specifically and allowed specifically to get this project to freeze on any future zoning. And I don't think that's correct.
I'm not sure a reasonable person could conclude that, Michael. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think a reasonable person would reach that conclusion. I think the other thing is whether the application is complete or incomplete. It ends up, it's looked at both sides. What is the time for the applicant to come back and put a presentation together? But two, given the amount of time and the amount of projects in front of the planning board, when you put the agenda together, you've got to figure out how you can best manage your time. It's not to hinder any application before it. And this is one that fits into that category.
Well, all my development clients, almost to the person, have a purchase and sales agreement where they don't buy the property until they get the project permitted. I know this group, and again, I'm not opposed to this project in any form. I have some concerns. But my clients over the past 40 years have spent their resources to get projects permitted with engineering, landscaping, traffic, you name it, prior to their initial application. And I'm concerned that the planning board is changing their policy.
I don't think that's true. I think the last big project we did was exactly the same way. They didn't close on the deal until after they
And that was another big.
permitted it, right?
Big
And so I
national-
don't think that's consistent.
But it's
Not to mention
another
that
big
this
national company.
is also a special permit, and the planning board has a fair amount of latitude on the special permit application, and we will require everybody to address all the issues that need to be addressed.
And again, my last point is that local developers are held to a higher standard.
I have to respectfully disagree with you. All right, thank you very much, very much. Yes, sir, one last question.
Yeah, Richard Berkeley, 16 Driftway. Is it my understanding, except for that coffee shop exit up the other end, that whole MBTA lot is going to enter it and exit it this far in? You know, this.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's,
That's an interesting observation, and thank you very much for that.
I think that, right now, I think there's 3 entrances and exits, curb cuts, but going from Old Driftway as it's on the map, on the drawing, entering and exit. But now it's all reduced to that one down the end, except for the so-called coffee shop, one-way loop.
Well,
I think
There's 3 of them, right?
there's a
There's 3.
problem with
Yeah.
it. It's becoming a traffic jam, this whole Greenbush idea. This is a gateway to a lot of Scituate and not really a village. And to try to force it into a village, you're gonna make it like a traditional village such as historic Norwell Center that developed during the horse and buggy. And they have parking and you're gonna, I mean, they don't have a commuter rail station here. And we have all this plus all the traffic going to the harbor on the weekends, whatever, and the circle, Rotary. This is going to become a nightmare as far as I can see.
we will make sure that it is not.
I hope so.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for coming this evening. We have a motion to, for continuance.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
So the board does want to refer to the design review committee?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
And please, you know,
Hold on a second.
hang on,
We need
just
to
hang on one
pass the-
second.
Get business done here.
Yep.
I move to accept the applicant's request to continue the public hearing for the mixed-use special permit in the Village Business Overlay District for Drew Company, Inc. at 247 Driftway until April 25th, 2019 at 7 PM, and continue the time for action until May 31st, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're all set.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
see you in April.
Tell them if they need a copy of the plans or the planning board.
What?
If they need a copy of the plans, or they come with them in your office, right?
I will, is there anything else from the board, or do we want to continue, or do you want to adjourn? Are you done?
Continue what?
Just any discussion? No, we're done.
Oh, we went through everything else before, right?
Yes. I'll entertain Bill's motion.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.
Tell them to turn off the TV.
My job.
Thank you.